a folk music composition, and Kuyi are heritage of the nations. The sounds of the Great Steppe are different instruments and melodious compositions. The great and mysterious music is on the program. The sounds of the Great Steppe. Music is a great art which is common for all people. Music has often been referred to as sorcery, or a mysterious entity that has power over our minds that we can't quite grasp. This creation of sound, so abstract and subtle in its entirety, gives the ability to make us feel, act, and think a certain way. A simple combination of rhythm and melody has the potential to influence actions and feelings, as well as connect a crowd of people on a level they don't quite understand. Music is able to soften a stone heart. We can notice such qualities in Kazakh Kuyi compositions. Kazakhs understand the mysterious sounds of the 2 strings and 22 frets of the instrument. That's why a Kazakh Kuyi composition is always great art. Each Kazakh composition has its own history and thoughts. Kuyi players wrote their compositions based on a certain story.
Менің орындаған күйім Абыл деген күй, оның тарихы енді өте қызық, қарасаңыздар.
I performed the Abıl Kuyi composition. The history of this Kuyi is very interesting. There was a war between Kazakh and Turkmen at the end of the 18th century to the middle of the 19th century. Abıl Tarak Uli was a legendary man with his Kuyi compositions. In one of the wars, he was arrested. That moment there was an order to kill Abıl, but he bravely offered to the head of prison to play one Kuyi composition. The head of the prison told him, "Okay, you can play, but I know one of the Kuyi players. If you will play better than him, you will stay alive. Otherwise, we will kill you." This story came to us from our ancestors. Abıl performed the Kuyi composition. Owing to the power of the art, he stayed alive. The head of the prison was impressed of his performance and told him, He played the cue composition as a bil, therefore they won't kill him. The cue player replied to him, "No, I did not play as a bil. I am a bil musician." Then we received a bil cue compositions with its own history. I like the cue composition, a bil. The dombra instrument had not 6 frets in ancient times as nowadays, and a bil's cue composition consisted from the melodies with re, mi notes. A bil was a musician who added changes to the Kazakh Kuyi compositions.
Күйдің формасына өзгерістерді енгізген адамдардың бірі болып табылады.
Once lived a woman who played cue compositions, but regarding to the tradition, Kazakh people did not allow a woman to play cues, and the woman should not give performance as well. It was a rule of Kazakh tradition. That woman was one of the great cue players. Usually Kazakhs invited in some celebrations singers and cue players and listened to their songs. And that woman was also invited often to the celebrations and fests. But her husband was unhappy as his wife played cue compositions, and one day he gouged out her eyes with one reason, as he did not want her to perform her talent in front of the audience. We can say as it was meanness to the art. Due to the destiny of this cue player woman, Dina wrote the cue composition, Nightingale. It is not an image of the nightingale bird, it is a philosophic cue composition. The cue belongs to the West Music School. Yerzhan Rismetov was born in the historical Taraz city. He is one of the great dombra players and cue players of the Zhombol region. Our program's hero shared with us the next line. There are 2 types of cue players. The first player usually plays through his depth of heart, while the second player plays through the techniques and notes. The Kazakh cue compositions are magnificent, and some compositions will not be written in the notes. Every musician plays cues in his own singular way. Yerzhan Rismetov is also performing cues in his own way. He feels every sound and plays with his heart. Especially historical cue compositions he plays with significance.
Kosbasar is one of the cue compositions where musicians play the sorrow and the yearning to the people. The magnificent and great cue player, Sugir, performed the Kosbasar cue. I was impressed by this cue composition, and it is in my repertoire now. There are learning, longing, and full of sorrow feelings. The history of this cue is very interesting. Turash Abuov is a local composer and author of this cue composition. During the war, he was a journalist in the front newspaper. There are two compositions which were left by him. People met him in the forest near Moscow, among the new Kazakh battalion. The soldiers were yearning about their home. When they saw the Kazakh journalist, Turash Abuov, soldiers told their stories and their longing about the native land. The next morning, the soldiers went to war. In those times, the whole battalion was killed. All Kazakh soldiers died. Yesterday, all the guys who were alive are dead today. The journalist thought about their fate and wrote this cue composition. The previous name of this cue was Jasa Komsomol. Later, he changed the title of the composition to Arnau. I think this is a good title for this cue composition. Kazakh guys who play dombra recorded a cue composition in one of the studios in London. He put the microphone in front of me now. And in that studio, they put the microphone on the backside of the dombra to record the sound of the instrument. The guys asked, why did they put the microphone on the backside of the instrument? And they replied, the power of the sounds is a wave what revolves around a person. So they recorded the sound of the dombra and wrote a cue composition. There is power here. The cue composition comes through the mood and spirit. Kazakhs usually ask, how is your mood? As we know, foreign music experts underline Kazakh cue art as one of the great arts. Shokan Ualikhanov said, in the next century, the sounds of dombra will sound loud. If you noticed, he was right. The dombra cue compositions developed better than kobuz compositions. Owing to our ancestors, they were received in the 21st century. Let our cue compositions sound eternal in our country.